So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to our global Nimble community. My name is John Ferrara, and this webinar is really important and exciting for me because I believe that workflows will change the way you work, and I'm going to show you how. For those that don't know me, I am a serial entrepreneur. Um, my poor wife. Um, I've been building relationship management systems since we did it by paper. Back in the day, I used to roll with something called a day timer, and I struggled to build the relationships that I needed to achieve the dreams I had. And I found that as a part of a team, we needed a team relationship manager, not just a place where I stick my contacts in my day timer and my forecasts and spreadsheets. I couldn't find it, so I built Goldmine with our team, and it enabled me to retire and spend 10 years as a dad. And I'll tell you what, if you are a father, spend time with your kids because it's precious times. But that enabled me to use social media, and I saw the way it was going to change the way work, play, buy, and sell. And that's why we built Nimble. So today we're going to talk about a little bit of history of relationship management. We're going to talk about why Serums should be used by the whole company, and if they are going to be used by the whole company, why you need more than deals as a result of your relationships. And so for those that don't know, there's 225 million global businesses and less than 1% use any CRM. It's really a testimony to the fact that CRMs don't work for us. We work for them, and we have to go to them to use them. And they're really not about relationships. They're about command and control and reporting. And that's what we're here to change at Nimble. And by the way, please ask questions, type them in the question box. We're going to be answering them throughout the presentation and at the end. So contact management is the root of CRM, which is relationship management. And I really believe that you can't get a sale until you've built or established some type of relationship. And so back in the day, before Outlook existed, where Goldmine and Act were the tools of trade for salespeople, they were great contact managers. And I think that's really what's missing from today's CRMs is a good relationship manager. And even today, Outlook doesn't cut it. Outlook isn't a good team relationship manager, and neither is Google Workspace. And so most people, believe it or not, manage their relationships in spreadsheets or Gmail or LinkedIn or Twitter or a combination thereof. And that's just individuals. But at a company, you have your email productivity suite, which is either Google or Microsoft, and each team member has a separate contact database in Google and Microsoft. So you don't have a team relationship platform. And then you have separate contact databases throughout your company in sales, marketing, customer service, and accounting. And I think that's what causes and maintains the silos that we all see in our corporations. And ultimately, it takes a village of relationships for you to achieve your goals in your business. And less than 5% of the people in your company are in sales. Most of them are doing other things with the constituency around your business. So what you need is a team relationship manager that enables you to connect with all the people around your company. And at Nimble, we connect to editors, analysts, bloggers, influencers, third-party developers, investors, advisors, and prospects and customers. And we use Nimble as the tool for all that. And sometimes we use Nimble inside the tools we have, like in our marketing program or in social or in our email apps. And so we built Nimble as a platform that will unify your disparate contacts from all your contact places in email and social and the business apps, and then work back in those places that you work. And so that's one of the things I love about Nimble is that it brings your contacts with you wherever you engage. And there's a thing called a Dunbar limit where you can only remember 100 to 200 people in your head at one time. And if you do what you're supposed to do in today's social selling world and establish a identity in the places where your prospects, customers, and ideally their influencers live and learn and grow, and give away your knowledge on a daily basis to become their trusted advisor, you're going to have tens of thousands of contacts. And so you're not going to remember people when you open up an email or somebody engages with you in social. And that's why you need a relationship platform that works for you by building itself and then works with you wherever you work. And so what's the purpose of a relationship manager? Well, let's just say, what's the purpose of a CRM? Most CRMs cycle is you add a contact, you log a note, and you schedule a task if you're diligent and you're doing what you're supposed to do. Because if you don't have a next action with somebody, you don't have a purpose with them. And if you don't have a purpose for somebody, don't put them in your CRM database. Don't put them in your contact database because it's a waste of time. So you should have a purpose and a plan and a process. And so most CRMs results is a deal. But the thing is that most relationships aren't about deals. It's really about paying other people forward in order to achieve your dreams. That's really your purpose on this planet, is to grow by helping other people grow. And you don't grow them by bagging and tagging and selling them. You serve them. That is the new sales. And so if you are going to do something more than deals, you need a result or process to put them in, and that's why we built Workflows. Workflow is a system to manage repetitive people and company related processes in your business. And so where can you use these? Literally everywhere in your business, because every part of your business involves people and companies. And so we built Workflows that enables you to have a board of stages that have cards in them on people and companies, that have fields in them that relate to the information that you're interacting with them about, and you could use it for a huge number of purposes. And we're going to cover some of those here today. The benefits of building repetitive people and company processes is that when you onboard new team members in your company, you can teach them those processes, and then they could put them through Workflows, and you can visualize and track the details that you need to achieve the goals that you have. And so Workflows help companies scale, because building repeatable processes or documenting processes you have in your company is really the only way to achieve success. So without further ado, let's get started and talk about this a little bit. So back in the day, this is how we all outreach. And if this looks familiar to any of you, please put in the chat box and say, yep, I still use spreadsheets to do my outreach. And why do we resort back to spreadsheets when we're outreaching to people? And this outreach is a press outreach list, but it could be an influencer outreach list. It could be a biz dev, investor, whatever it is. You do this because you can build these rows of people with the columns of fields that you need to track. But the problem with using spreadsheets for outreach and processes is that it's not connected to the people and companies that you're doing it with. So they're basically static records of information that quickly becomes out of date, and you just don't use it. So maybe it's worthwhile for a week or so, but over time it just decays. So then you might resort to some type of to-do program, project tool, whatever. And these are great because you can build a board with stages and have these details you track. But the problem is they're not related to the people and companies that you're doing them with. And so that's why we built Nimble Workflows, because with Workflows, you now have this board that you can build that tracks the people and company related business processes that you're doing in your business. And I'm going to start with a press outreach board. And it's more powerful when other people talk about you than when you talk about you. And the only way to get other people to talk about you is to build pay it forward relationships. And once you've done that and built trust and intimacy, well, then maybe they will help you to tell your story. And it's actually one of the ways that we built Goldmine into a global brand. We never advertised at Goldmine for the first 6 years. And so how did we scale to $100+ million a year in revenue? We did it by building relationships with the trusted advisor of our prospects, starting with the network reseller and then the technology writers. And the way that we did that is we paid those writers forward by connecting with them and asking them how we can help them achieve their goals. Specifically, how can we help them write more stories? And they're writing stories about business and technology. And they said, tell us stories about how people are using technology to grow. And so I became a storyteller and a relationship builder with the trusted advisor of our prospects and the editors at PC Magazine and Forbes, et cetera. And we ended up winning, I think, 7 or 8 PC Magazine Editor's Choice Awards in a row. And that's what helped build the brand. So this is an example of outreach to press. And so the way it works is we will go and identify people that have written about Nimble or our competitors. And so this is an example of this person wrote about a CRM called Zoho. And so our team goes and identifies those people and puts them into potential. And so then what happens is in this is essentially, let me start at the beginning. This is a board, a Nimble workflow that has a series of stages that we put cards on people and companies in there. And the companies are PR publications and the people are PR writers. And so what we'll do is when we put them in there and you see I click this card and you see the widget pops up. So this is like a view into the contact record. I can click this and it'll go to the contact record. And now I can go back to the workflow like that. But I can bring the contact record into the workflow. And so inside of this contact record, I can see all the great stuff that I need, like all the interactions that I've had with them. I can walk in their digital footprint. I can see the interactions that we've had on social. But more importantly, I have the workflow fields. So these are the fields associated with this card. So how do those fields get there? So essentially, you can modify the stages of the workflow. And these are the stages, these columns, and you can modify the fields. And the fields are the information that you collect on the card. And so if you think about it, this is a card, and these are the fields in the card in the traditional spreadsheet view. And by the way, you can look at these cards in a list view or board view. So essentially, you can have that sort of spreadsheet view within Nimble, or you can have the board view. So it's great to have that view either way. And so when I'm looking at one of these cards inside of this workflow, what I can do is I can, and by the way, when you're looking at this, you can see them, they're broken up into the sections here. So these are the stages. So that's sort of the whole definition of workflows. And the boards, they're essentially made up of stages, and you can modify the stages. They're made up of fields on the cards, and you can configure those fields. And the fields can either be new fields that are for this particular workflow or existing fields that already exist on the contact record. And so contact records come pre-built with a bunch of fields that Nimble puts in there. So you essentially have basic fields in Nimble cards like name, address, email, etc. You can go ahead and create new fields within Nimble contact records, and you can create new fields for workflows. So when you go and look at a workflow card and you click it, you see the fields associated with the card. And so what my team will do, what our team will do is they'll go and identify somebody who's written about Nimble or our competitor. And then what I'll do is they put in potential and I'll look at it. And so what do I look for? I look for that person's background and what they have written before and who they write for, and to make sure that they would be somebody that would potentially write about us, because we don't want to invest in the relationship if we don't think that we can create mutual value for each other. And so one of the things that we do is one of the fields that we track is this thing called Muckrack for the person. And Muckrack is a PR database site that essentially tracks writers and publications. And then once I've looked at the person and the publication, then what I'll do is I'll confirm it. And so once it's confirmed, then the team will begin to nurture it. Well, what happens if the record isn't complete? Well, I'll put it into cleanup, and then once I clean it up, I'll check it, and then I'll basically decide if it goes into confirmed or not. So essentially, that's the flow before they get into the nurture cycle. So what is the nurture cycle? So if you have ever tried to reach out to the press before, you'll find that they just get buried in emails and requests of people writing about them. And you should never, ever, ever just cold reach out to a writer and say, write about me, because everybody does it and they're tired of it. And so what we'll do is we will nurture them by curating content from their materials. And this is an example of a curated content. So we'll walk in the digital footprint and we'll curate some of their content, and then we'll do that. We'll share that on our Nimble brand, on my brand, and on the team members brand. And what that does is it creates an interaction. And so what you'll see is that when we do that, typically there's some type of engagement that happens. So we'll nurture it over a period of a few weeks, and then we'll outreach. And so what happens before that happens in that outreach is there's typically some type of engagement. And so if they do engage with us, and most people do, because it's natural to say thank you, etc. And so when they do engage, what happens is we'll track that engagement. And so in the interactions, you'll see that there was an engagement, and so we track that, and so you can see that she said thanks for sharing, and then we reply back, and that starts a conversation. That's your opportunity to open the door and drive further interactions. And what happened was that then resulted in a LinkedIn invite, which resulted in a calendar connection and a one-on-one conversation. And now this influencer Forbes writer is a Nimble user and storyteller with us. And so that's the way it sort of works for targeted press outreach. And we do the same thing for influencers. So one of the people listening to this today, Bernie Borges, is a marketing influencer. If you don't know Bernie, you should definitely get to know Bernie. Bernie is the bomb. And Bernie has a really great podcast that he does, and you should definitely check out his podcast. We did the exact same thing with Bernie, and literally with thousands of influencers. And that's how we built the Nimble brand, is by identifying the influencer of our prospect, curating their content and paying them forward, which starts a conversation, which results in an interaction. And so you could literally add people to workflows from anywhere you work. And so here's an example where we curated content. There was interaction from our brand, which happens to be a SaaS social B2B technology. And what I did was I grabbed that interaction and I built a record for the company, and saw that they were a SaaS B2B social selling app. And I looked up their CEO and saw who it was, and basically replied back and said, I'd love to chat. And then he popped in and said, yeah, I'd love to connect with you. And I was able to take this conversation back into Nimble and put them into a workflow. And so ultimately, wherever you're connecting, if you're connecting on LinkedIn or whatever, wherever you're connecting, what you want to be able to do is to take these conversations and not just make a connection and be done with it. You want to put them through a process, because if you're going to invest your time, there should be a purpose, and the processes allow you to take these people from these conversations and put them in the processes. So that would be a professional networking process. And we actually have processes that we've defined for Nimble for a variety of business use cases that you could use for doing biz dev, for doing professional networking, for doing real estate, for doing lead qualification, for doing human resources, for hiring. And so let's talk about the hiring use case. So we are in the process of hiring and expanding our marketing team. And so we went and did an Indeed ad. And so in our Indeed ad, we have these applicants. So here's our candidates. And so what we did with the candidates, and I'm just going to go to one that is not already entered. So here it is. And so this is a new person that's applying. So with Nimble, you turn Nimble on in the browser, and Nimble will automatically recognize that we're in Indeed and actually go build the record for this person. And so so essentially, Nimble enables me, if I wanted to add that record right now, I could, but I wouldn't until I reviewed the resume and saw if this person is a fit for being a prospective candidate for us. And so let's say that they are that candidate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to download their resume. I'm going to use Nimble to add them to Nimble. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach the resume to the contact, and then what happens is I'm going to add them to the workflow. So this is the PR and marketing associate workflow. And so now I'm done. And so it's that easy to add people into the workflow and begin the process of the engagement. And so what happens now is, let's assume that this was a proposed one. Once you move them into here, and this is when we would send the invitation. So essentially, Nimble has templates, and it would automatically go and send that invitation to that person. And then we would have the initial interview. And then if they pass that interview, we would then move them into sent assignment. And we send them an assignment to see some of their work product. And then we review this, we get the assignment, review it, have a discussion. And if we like the assignment, then we have a secondary interview with myself or the team. And if they pass that, then we do reference check-in and we do an offer, and they're hired. And so that's our new hire workflow. But one of the real exciting things that that we're adding to Nimble Workflows is automation. And so I actually trademarked automated processes, I think 30 years ago. So 30 years ago, there wasn't marketing automation. And so so essentially, when people would put a name in Goldmine, they'd have to teach their team members to do all these things. And if you've ever tried to teach anybody to do anything, what you'll notice is that it's really hard to get people to do anything. So we essentially, and I'm not sure why that's not opening, but so what we did was we built automated processes, which was if this, then that for people and companies. So if you put a name in Goldmine, if it looks like this, Goldmine would do that. Day 1, do this. Day 7, do that. If this happens, stop this and do that. And so I don't know if you noticed or not, but when I put it into here, then the team member had to go and send the templated email, which was the interview request, right? And so rather than having to do that manually, and also when you put them in here, you're supposed to tag them a certain way. So these people are all supposed to be tagged a certain way. They're supposed to be tagged social media marketing hire August 22. So Julie, let's make sure that Amanda gets tagged. But you see how things just get overlooked, right? Because you're trying to do all these things. If you put them into this workflow, ideally they're tagged and the message is sent. And you can see that people forget those things. Some have them, some don't. So how do you make sure that things get done? When you put them in a workflow or move them to a stage, how do you tag them? How do you notify team members that people have moved from one stage to the other, blah, blah, blah. So what we've done is we're going to be releasing workflow automations. And so within the workflow, you're going to be able to define these automations. So for instance, if a contact is put in resume reviewed, then send them this message. Thank you for applying for the position. We reviewed your qualifications. We'd like to have a meeting, blah, blah, blah. So that would be one thing. And then what you could do is you can edit that trigger and say that you, or you can either edit that trigger to have that do the trigger, or you can add a new trigger. So a trigger, an automation, can do multiple things at one time. So you could say, if I put it into here, what I want you to do is I want you to add this tag and send this message and notify the agent in charge that this has happened. And so with the workflow automations, what you're going to be able to do is you're going to be able to go in and define automations where you can, when somebody goes into a stage, you can notify somebody on your team. You can tag them. You can send the recipient a message. You can add a note. You can create activities. And we'll be adding more triggers and actions, not just in workflows, but in deals and in contacts and also in messages. So you'll be able to say, send this message after 3 days. If you don't hear a reply, send this message. And so we're really excited about automations and how they're going to apply to workflows. And you can see how it's going to make it much easier to make sure that the minute details that you want to get done, and you can move people through these workflows and get them done as they go through. And so some of the other workflows that we do is we do podcast outreach workflows. So like I said, it's more powerful when other people talk about you than when you talk about you. And what's better than to go join a platform where your constituency are gathering to learn how to be better, smarter, faster in and around the areas of promise to your product and services. And so what we do is we identify podcasts that are influential for our target audience in and around the promise of our product, social sales and marketing, entrepreneurship, etc. And then what we'll do is we'll curate their content and share it to drive interactions with those people, eventually getting booked on their shows. And it's really easy to do. If you pay people forward, they'll notice you. And if you listen and engage when they notice and connect with you and start a conversation, and you're doing that conversation not to ask them for something, but to find a way to add value to them, magic happens in life. You could also use it for real estate. So if you're doing listings or selling or whatever, you could use it for that. You could use it for accounts payables. You know how many people don't follow up with their payables? And it's really easy and great for that. You could use it for fundraising. So if you're trying to raise money, you could use it for sales leads. So you should never put a unqualified lead in your deals pipeline. So you should use a separate workflow for qualifying your leads. And so you could definitely use it for that as well. And so just click that and close it. So getting back into this workflow here, I wanted to show you some of the additional details that you could do with workflows. not just inside of workflows, but really outside of workflows as well. And so as I was showing and sharing with you before, what's the whole purpose of connecting with people if not to drive them through a process, etc. And so here's an example of a connection. David Libby, I guess, is on the webinar. Thank you, David, for reaching out. So kind of you to do so. And what I love to do is I love to just add people to my Nimble as I connect with them. And so you can see how Nimble will automatically build a record from somebody's LinkedIn page just like that. So I didn't have to lift a finger. Nimble automatically built the record for David, and now I have this beautiful record that's built for me by Nimble, and I could put him into a workflow. And so professional networking, workflow, cha-cha-cha. I need to clean this up a little bit. You know what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a organizational thing in here. So as you begin to have more workflows in there, we'll just have like a organization way where you can go ahead and build that. But you can see how much more effective this is to be able to add records from your interactions, and you can literally do it from wherever you're at. And so if I'm in an email and I need to follow up with somebody and I want to put them in a workflow, I could do it from emails, I could do it from social, I could do it from inside of Outlook, etc. And so you can even do it off of a Forbes article. So if I'm reading an article and I see that they're talking about this person, Satish Dharma, and I want to reach out to Satish, I could just go and highlight Satish's name and then go ahead and build a record for Satish. And Nimble doesn't know, if you give Nimble a unique identifier, it will automatically build a record for that person. And so I'm just going to show you an example of that. So if I highlight Adam, Nimble will automatically build a record for Adam because it's a known identity. So that's automatic. But if it's just a string, Nimble doesn't know. So if I put a string in there like Satish Dharmaraj, I have to confirm the identity. Once I confirm one of them, it maps the rest of them. And then I can go ahead and add them to Nimble. And if you give Nimble first name, last name, company domain name, Nimble will automatically give you their email. And so, so there it is. So essentially, Nimble will give you all that information. And I built a record inside of for a business article. Could have been a business website, doesn't matter. And then I can add them to the workflow. And so you could literally use workflows anywhere as you're at. You could even use it inside of your business tool. So here I am inside of our market automation system. We use something called Intercom. And so with inside of Intercom, you can pretend this is your marketing tool, your MailChimp or whatever. You could pretend it's your CRM. And so if I'm working with this person, I could simply highlight their name, and Nimble will then go and automatically build or bring up the record. I could use Nimble within that, and I could put people into workflows in that as well. And so the key thing I want you to remember is that in your company, you should be using a team relationship manager, not just a CRM, and it should be used by the whole company. That CRMs stand for relationship management, and relationships happen across your whole company. And that if you are going to use a team relationship platform across your company, You want to be able to have a purpose, an end result for those relationships, and that's not just deals. And by the way, if you like the UI that we have with the new workflows, wait till you see new deals, which will be coming up in the next couple of months. We're completely reworking deals to have all the beautiful new UI and functionality that you see in workflows and more. So the purpose of a relationship should not always be a sale. And if it is a separate purpose beyond that for your whole team, you should be building repeatable people and company business processes, and spreadsheets aren't good for those. Neither are project tools. That's why we built workflows. And so I really encourage you to check it out. We've got FAQs and all kinds of really good things to learn about it. And we also have templates that you can go ahead and pick, and you can modify these templates. You can modify the stages or the fields and make them all your own. And then I encourage you to share with me your workflows that you're doing, because we want to start to publish and share the learnings that other people have, kind of like Zapier does, where they publish other people's Zaps. We want to be able to have people share their workflows. And so with that, I'd love to begin to answer some questions. And so let me just go ahead and open up the Q&A box here. Julie, how are we doing with the questions? We have a bunch of them.
We did get a fair amount of questions, but I think most of them have been answered. I do have some questions saved for you that I could not answer myself.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go through. Do you have a workflow for a PR like what John shared? That's a question from David. And yes, we have PR workflows here within Nimble. So this is a press PR outreach. This is one for bloggers, etc. We haven't published them exactly like how we're doing it internally. And you have to remember that Nimble just launched workflows at the beginning of this year, and we are beginning to make them our own and incorporate them in. But if anybody wants to get a template or at least more detail on ours, let us know. And but you can also just back up the video and just duplicate the template from within our system. Got a question from Patricia Hughes. Is that my cousin, Patricia Hughes from St. Louis? Hey, cuz. By the way, my family is Sicilian and Irish, and my Irish cousins moved to Minnesota, and I guess St. Louis is in Missouri, and I do a lot of ancestry, and I met up with our cousins that still live on the farm where our ancestors came from, and it's really great. I'd love to be a beta tester for the new features. Of course, Patricia, we'll set you up. Within workflows, are the configure fields different from the other custom contact fields? So let's go into that, because that's kind of subtle. So configure fields allows you to configure the fields that will be displayed on this card. And those fields can be either new fields that you create for this workflow, or you can select fields that already exist in the card. In this rendition of workflows, the fields that you create are fields, this one here, when you create a field right here, you're creating the field. That field actually gets created inside of the Nimble record. So all fields that get created, so I can create fields right here. So this is a tab, and these are fields that were created for this contact record by going over to the data fields and creating tabs with fields inside of those tabs. So these are custom fields and tabs of fields that you can create that are then displayed on all the Nimble contact records. And the workflow cards can contain any of the standard fields of Nimble. Standard fields might be name, address, city, state, zip, blah, blah, blah. Or it can contain the custom fields, and it can also contain the files that you attach to the record. So when you go and add a field, whether it's a new field or an existing field, those fields are any field that's in a Nimble contact card, including fields that were created for other workflows. So you don't have to duplicate a field that's already created. I'll give you an example. We use a field called muckrack. It's a text field and allows us to put a URL in there. So if you just create a text field and put a URL, Nimble's smart and it knows it's a URL and you can click it and it'll pop it up. So that URL, this field, muckrack field, is something that we use in the targeted press workflow. We also use it in the curated content workflow. So when we go and curate content from influencers, we add a workflow. We add the muckrack field in there as well. And so hopefully that answers your question about workflow fields. Can workflows be used instead of using deal flows? Yes, Nicholas. And Nicholas, nice to see you here. Nicholas is a university professor that invites me to speak at his classes. So Nicholas' question is, can you use workflows instead of deals? Well, yeah, it's kind of the same. The only difference is that deals is defined very specifically for a sale. So it's going to have fields like close date, amount, probability, and it's also going to have reporting that reports off that. And so, by the way, our new deals is going to have brand new reporting, and you're going to friggin' love them. It's going to be really great. And so, yes, you could use Nimble Workflows instead of deals. You could basically just build the fields that you want to track. You just won't get any reporting on it. But we will be building brand new deals and reporting that'll effectively look just like workflows, but be very narrowly focused on the deal process. So if you think about it, deals and workflows are essentially just boards of people and company data. It's just that workflows is very open to configuring it to do anything you want, and deals is very focused on a sale. So I hope that helps, Nicholas. So let me just go through the rest of these questions and see if there's any more. And Julie, if any new questions come in, let me know. What's the timing of automation's availability? Bernie asked. The team said next week, so it probably would be next week because our team is awesome. By the way, our Nimble team is Ukrainian, and I just want to give them and the Ukrainian people a shout out, because what they're going through should not happen to any civilized nation, and we've been living through that as a team for some time, and I could tell you it's really affected us in a certain way. I mean, it's really affected me personally, and so if you can give time, money, prayers to the Ukraine people, please do. So the timing of automation is soon. It'll probably be next week. How do you generate a report from workflows? Mahmood. So we're going to be building integration with Power BI that will enable you to visualize and report on just about anything in Nimble. For now, what we'll do is we'll probably have an export function out of workflows that will allow you to export workflows just like we export deals. So you can essentially go and set those up how you want. How does the program handle prospects who use different emails with their various social media platforms? Do you merge the record manually? Well, So I'm not sure exactly what the question is, but Kurt Dandrix is an example. He has probably 1 million different emails, and so I can so right now, I guess in this record, he only has one. But if somebody has multiple emails, you can select the email that you want to send them to from within Nimble. And so you can see that there's multiple emails for that person. And if there are duplicates, you can merge duplicates by going find merge duplicates. I hope that helps. Will you be tying the deals page to workflows? We have projects where it's specified because they seem to start here. We like to type the deal into workflows. So yes, Debbie. So within workflows, you can send a card from workflows to deals. And I'll give you an example. So you might be using Nimble for lead qualification, convert it to a deal once it's qualified. You might be using it for biz dev, convert it to a deal once it's done. But I do think that there is a need for converting a deal to a workflow. For instance, if you sell somebody something, then what you want to do is build a workflow for implementing or delivering on your service. And so with our new deals, we'll definitely have the ability to create work to convert a deal into a workflow. We currently do have an ability to convert workflows into deals. Should workflows be ordered in a serial sequence, or can be looped back to a different workflow? Yeah, you can essentially, I'm pretty sure that you can convert a workflow from one workflow to another. But Julie, can you get this person's email and get an answer to that? Because if we don't, we should, and I'm pretty sure we do, but I'm not sure for sure. Does Nimble have a free option for trial? Yes, it's a 2-week trial, Sophia, and so you can sign up and you can get a 2-week trial. And by the way, for those of you that are not currently a subscriber, I encourage you to consider subscribing. And if you do, here's a code, John40, to get 40% off your first 3 months. Also, join our Nimble community. Let us know more about you and how we can help you grow. So were there any more questions? Just going through. Does Nimble integrate with accounting programs? We use Wave. Nimble will connect to literally anything. Built into Nimble is the ability to connect to many different common programs. So if I don't see Wave in here, but let's pretend it's 0. So essentially you can import its export file. We don't have a two-way sync built into Nimble, but if you want two-way sync, you can go to any of the common tools like Zapier and essentially build any kind of automation that you want. Nimble does support that. And so if you were to just Google Nimble Wave Zapier, you'd find the connection like that. So there it is. Are API integrations available? We do have an API, a REST API that you can access. What's the best practice for adding a new record at the contact page, or should the company be added first? So that's a great question. So let's pretend I was going to add Zapier as a company. So I can, if I'm on the company page, I can easily go like that, and then Nimble will bring up the company if it exists, or build a company. And you can see that Nimble automatically builds these beautiful records on people and companies. And then once I do that, and I've added the company, then Nimble would allow me to go and add the people. And so, what I do is you go to Teams. Actually, no, that's not what it is. You go to, well, in this one, they don't have it. So if I want to add the people from the company, typically there's an about page on it, but Wade, I guess, doesn't want to put his team on there. So essentially, then once you've added the person, well, the company, then you can go ahead and add the person, and then it would just all link it automatically. So you could see that it added one more person to the company. So you could add the company first and then add the person. That's typically the way I would do it. Can you show again how to add Prospector to an existing account? Peter, I'm not sure the question that you mean by that, but if you want to add Nimble Prospector, if you go to the Nimble website and go to Prospector, you'll see that there's a button for adding the extension. So if you want to add Nimble Prospector to your browser, you could pick what browser you have. So you'd basically go and say add it, and you'd add the Prospector. Once you add Prospector to your browser, it shows up as a button. Also, if you're using Gmail, if you add Nimble to your browser, it automatically shows up in your tray, which is different than Microsoft. If you're using Microsoft, you need to add the Outlook add-in. You can use Nimble within Microsoft. You could use the Prospector within Microsoft, and you have to in a way when you're using contacts, because Microsoft doesn't have a API for its contact card. They have it for the calendar card. They have it for the email card. And to get this, you have to add the Prospector add-in right here. So essentially, Prospector has two plugins per se, one for your browser, one for Microsoft. Once you add Nimble to Microsoft 365, it's automatically added to Outlook Desktop and Outlook Mobile. Is there a training module that covers email campaign automation? Yes, there will be. If you go to, once we launch it, it's not launched yet, but if you want help, you just click help right here and you go to help articles, and essentially there's FAQs on literally everything. So if I wanted to learn how to use Prospector, I just go like that, and essentially there is how to install, how to use, etc. Will tasks be auto-populated in Nimble if entered in Outlook, or must they be added into Nimble? So you can automate tasks through automations. So with our automations, tasks is an option to create an activity. Right now, automations apply to workflow cards. In the future, we're going to add automations to contact cards, which means that if I add a card to Nimble, so let's say that I'm networking in LinkedIn, and I added David's card and I tagged him a certain way. By the way, David, I went to Cal State Northridge too. Go Matadors. So if I add his card to Nimble from here and I tag it a certain way with an automation, I could say if contact is added to Nimble and it's tagged this way, then create this task or put them in this workflow or whatever. And I think that's it. I think we're at the top of the hour. I just want to say thank you to everyone who took the time to come and join us for this webinar. I encourage you to reach out and connect with us and connect with me. Just Google me and connect with me on whatever channel makes sense for you. And I encourage you to Google yourself, because people will Google you, and you need to show up on that first page. And if you haven't, build a Wikipedia page for yourself. It's free and it's easy. Just follow the rules. And with that, good luck, and have a great rest of your Thursday. Thank you so much.